Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me and letting me to speak here today during this conference. As I was introduced, for the last almost 20 years, I've been working in the State Museum Auschwitz Birkenau in the research center. And as historians, as team, we focus on different aspects of Auschwitz history. And especially for the conference, I would like to present Auschwitz in focus on the medical facilities, not only experiments. Experiments actually would be the last part of my talk, but first the place as it was and why it was chosen eventually that the highest number of victims of experiments were in fact the prisoners of this camp. I have to say at the beginning that the medical crimes in Auschwitz are being presented in the place quite frequently. We've got many students from med schools coming for the place, to see the place first of all, and the visit is also supplemented with the lecture concerning the medical crimes in Auschwitz. There are students from Prague coming, again med students, coming twice per year for last several years. And also we were having the students, med students from Holland coming. So it's for us clear that the topic, that the idea is very important during the education process in various med schools. Well, let me start with the very beginning of Auschwitz as the camp. First of all, talking about Auschwitz, we absolutely need to remember that Auschwitz, it's not only one place. First of all, the camp was established in abandoned Polish army base in the outskirts of the town, where the Polish name Oświęcim was changed into German Auschwitz after this part of the country was incorporated into Nazi Germany after September 1939. As the local prisons in this area became overcrowded with all the people who were considered as those who could build and join the resistance movement, who could be the Nazi opposition, they were thinking very shortly about another place. Since the example of the concentration camp already existed in Germany, I mean Dachau as the Musterlager already was in operation, then Ravensbrück, Sachsenhausen, they were looking for some location which could be considered as the suitable place. And just this abandoned barracks were found as the new location. Very shortly it became too small, so the village Birkenau, located 3 kilometers away, was picked as another place for the extension. Auschwitz II, Birkenau, another camp was built there. The village was ruined, all the houses were just pulled down, and even more, the few surrounding villages were destroyed in order to have the space around and no witnesses. According to the previous idea, Birkenau was designed as the camp for 100,000 prisoners to be kept there. And as for the German economy, concentration camps were the source of slave labor. From the very beginning of the camp, the prisoners started to be sent for various sub-camps located by coal mines, factories, mainly in Upper Silesia, which is up till now the industrial part of the country. And approximately 40 of the camps were established, approximately because some of them existed for quite long period of time. Some of them were dismantled after the issue like for example in Galilee they established a sub-camp to get the wire, which was important for building the fence around the camp. So later on all the prisoners were sent back for the camp. And the biggest sub-camp which existed was Auschwitz-Monowitz, the territory where the prisoners, where the IG Farben industry started to build the factory which was almost ready to start the production, and because of the damages which were caused by the Allied forces in Atom 44, actually the production before the liberation never started. In terms of numbers and in terms of deportees, so we estimate that at least 1,300,000 people were sent for Auschwitz. In 1940, this is the year when the camp started to operate, and 1945, January 45, when the camp was liberated. In this number, a vast majority are Jewish people brought from all occupied Europe. The next group, 150,000 Polish people. Then 23,000 European Sinti and Roma. Then 15,000 Soviet prisoners of war. And approximately 25,000 people from the other European countries brought as arrested as the members of resistance movement or people tied to different type of organization. A few words about the first prisoners. 14th of June 1940 is considered as the beginning of the camp existence. This is the day where the first Polish prisoners were deported for the camp. Although the very first 30 numbers, from 1 to 30, were given to the German criminals who were brought for the place a few weeks later from Sachsenhausen in order to keep the position of the functionary prisoners. They were mainly Kapo, Block, Älteste. At the beginning, the camp was just for men. And in 1942, in March 1942, also the women started to be deported for Auschwitz. At the beginning, it was just an extension of Ravensbrück. The decision was changed later on, and then the commandant of Auschwitz was also the commandant of the Frauenlager, so the female camp. And again, the very first transport of female on the 26th of March 1942 were the German prisoners for the same seek as the men to keep the position of the supervisors. 999 women were brought in the morning, then in the evening another group, 999 Slovak Jewish women. And then from the prisons all over country, the women were brought. At the beginning they were kept in Auschwitz. Later on, when the Birkenau, the Frauenlager in Birkenau was partly completed, they were moved for the other camp, and until the end of the camp existence, the women were staying mainly in Birkenau, with the exception of block number 10 in Auschwitz I. The Jewish people, they were deported for Auschwitz before Endlösung, before final solution, I mean the 20th of January 1945, where the action of destroying European Jews started to be introduced. But they were mainly considered as Polish prisoners, Polish leading groups, Polish intellectuals. And they were considered as political prisoners. There was no separate category at that point for the Jewish people. It all changed after 1942, when the mass transports of the Jews were brought. And again, in numbers, majority of the Jewish deportees were from Hungary. Interesting thing that these transports were actually the latest mass deportations. They started in officially mid-May 1944, but we know that there were some transports brought at the end of April the same year. And then after 56 days, at the 9th of July 44, the deportation was stopped. So within this period of time, 438,000 people were deported. So that was absolutely extraordinary action. Then the Jewish people from Poland brought at actually the whole time of the camp existence. Then from France, Holland, Greece, Bohemia and Moravia, so today's Czech Republic, Slovakia, Belgium, Germany and Austria, former Yugoslavia, Italy and also Norway. And as it was mentioned, they were brought for destruction. So the photographs from the unloading platform taken by the two German officers as a documentation of the arrival of the Jewish people. Some of them, the first commandant, the organizer of the camp, Rudolf Höss, at the trial was asked about the percentage, so he gave the number approximately 80% were killed upon arrival. So the smaller number was sent for the camp and were registered, and then we may see the category introduced Jude and the new distinguishing mark, the combination of the two triangles, which were to indicate the Jewish prisoners. The same for men. Sometimes the triangles were combined with red, but still they composed altogether the Star of David. Sinti and Roma, they were the next ethnic group considered as the group for annihilation. They were treated as not integrated, enemies of the country in terms of racial and social reason. So in winter 1942 and then beginning of 43, Birkenau became the place where the Sinti and Roma, again from various European countries, started to be deported. They became prisoners of the camp. The Sinti and Roma were not selected. They were not even separated. They were all kept together in so-called Familienlager. The other names are Zigeunerlager in Birkenau. Most of the people died in the camp because of the catastrophic sanitary conditions, enormous starvation, and then on the 2nd of August 1944 the camp was liquidated. So those who were still alive, approximately 3,000 people, were killed in the gas chambers. Soviet prisoners were actually the second after Poles larger groups deported to Auschwitz. That was in summer 1941. First, the very first groups were brought for executions. They were mainly Soviet officers, so-called commissars. And then on the 9th of October 1941, 10,000 Soviet prisoners were deported to Auschwitz. Then more transports were sent, and again mortality rate among the soldiers were extremely high. So during the last roll call in January 45, only 92 Soviet soldiers were recorded in the camp. Then there were people brought here from all over occupied Europe, and the major groups are Czechs, approximately 10,000, then from Belarus, from France, Austria and Germany, from Russia, from Slovenia, and also from Ukraine. Many of them were people who were tied with the resistance movement, or just like the Ukrainians or Belarusians, very often arrested as the revenge because the partisans movement was very active in this area. So this is why the people became the prisoners, first the arrested and then the prisoners. So that was just the that was just Auschwitz. There are many places and so many people brought in because of different reasons and in different period of time. We need to remember about it because it strictly affected their faith in the camp. The medical staff in the camp appeared from the very beginning, and it was just because of the structure of the camp. For the administration of the concentration camps, which was similar to the prison, the medical help was to be provided. So this is why the doctors were sent here. Dr. Edward Wirtz, which was mentioned on a few occasions here. We may see him on several pictures, like the one here, taken in Birkenau during the opening of the SS Lazaret. In terms of doctors mentioned by the survivors, the names which are coming very often are Dr. Entres, Fischer, Halmersen, Kitt, Klein, König, Lukas, Meyer, Mengele, Plaza, Rode, Tilo, Vetter. Mentioned in order of selections which were carried out on the unloading platform, and also in order to the decisions of different medical issues. Not only doctors, also the nurses of Red Cross, of German Red Cross. Like here we may see a group of them again from the ceremony of the opening of the Lazaret in Birkenau. One of them is exceptionally remembered by the survivors, Maria Stromberger, a nurse of a German Red Cross who, being in the camp, eventually started to cooperate with the resistance movement, helping a lot the inmates of the camp. Where the medical places and at the same time the experiments were facilitated. So in Auschwitz there was a hospital, as I mentioned, and 4 of the blocks were separated as the hospital. So 19, 20, 21 and 20. Then there was also a separate hospital for the SS staff, which was just on the outside of the barbed wire fence. Then in Birkenau, as the territory was much larger, in the female sector, just in sector A, several of the buildings were used for the hospital. For the men, separate sector was organized on the top of the sector B. Then in terms of SS staff, the Lazaret was specially built, and the few pictures we saw a moment ago, then they were from this place. Then also in the documentation, surviving documentation, we can read a lot about the activity of the German doctors in connection to the medical, to the experiments, and also for another projects. Like here we've got the assignment for the blood test. This one is actually signed by Josef Mengele, and here we may read that it was the blood test of a few prisoners from Zigeunerlager B2E, which was the gypsy camp. Then the doctors were also obliged to certify, to call the death. Like here we've got the death certificate of Marian Gieszczykiewicz, a Polish prisoner, doctor by profession, and the one who stated his death was Dr. Meyer. Here it's written even the Todesursache, a very serious medical term, but we know from the testimonies that Dr. Gieszczykiewicz was in fact executed in front of the wall of death. So the reasons were usually fake. Then the books from the hospital blocks, like here we've got the register from the surgery book with, again, very detailed marks and notes concerning different prisoners, also Jewish prisoners. For example, here we've got the number started with A. That was a special category presented for the Hungarian Jews. So they were also taken for some procedures. Here is a block, here is the register from block number 20, and again different colors, and notice please here this mark indicates that the person died in the camp. So mortality rate, despite of the fact that it was they were even professionally called as the separate wards of the hospital, the mortality rate was extremely high. Then the Röntgen, as it was mentioned on a few occasions, and not only the German doctors were sent for the hospital. From among the prisoners, as it was mentioned even today during the lectures, there were many doctors sent for their duties. And here we've got, for example, from block number 19, and we've got in block number, in room number 9, several of the doctors. In this case, they are all Jewish doctors. But for example, well, yesterday we were talking about the dentists just here in this room. So we've got the Zahnstation, and again, several doctors, this time also of the non-Jewish origin, 2 Polish doctors and also the Dutch doctor. Well, on this field, on this ground, with these possibilities, several experiments were carried out. The one which are the most known are the experiments by Dr. Josef Mengele, which are being here during this conference widely and detailedly analyzed from different perspectives. Then the second group of, sorry, I will skip a little bit of the material, are the experiments conducted by Dr. Klauberg. Dr. Klauberg in block number 10, we will actually today have a little bit more about it. Then Kurt Heismeyer. And to finish, as I have to, I would like to finish with this photograph, which is very close to me, Eduard Reichenbach. It's actually more about the brother who's sitting here in the Itzhak Reichenbach. He was visiting the museum with he survived the camp, his brother did not. And after the war, as a grown-up person, he was looking for the information about what happened to his brother. And for many years, there was no results. And when he started to be more active in education, when he started to travel to Poland with the Israeli youth, he visited our department. And our historians helped him to find the information that his brother Edward was chosen by Dr. Heismeyer for the experiments, and he died in Neuengamme in the latest day of the war. After that, well, that was very sad and bad news for Itzhak Reichenbach, as the family still hoped that he might be somewhere, but at least they knew what happened. So this contact stayed. He's visiting us as often as he can, and even more here in Israel, he became more active in education and also teaching about the victims of the experiments. Thank you very much for your attention.